The night was dark, and the rain fell hard on the old metal roof. Taiho sat alone in his repair shop, drinking cold tea and listening to the storm. His shop was small and messy, filled with broken machines and spare parts. He had built this place with his own hands 20 years ago, and he had never left. Taiho was a simple man. He fixed things. That was his life. Farmers brought him their broken tractors. Factory workers brought him damaged robots. Sometimes, men in dark clothes brought him military machines and paid him in cash. He never asked where these things came from. He never asked questions at all. Questions brought trouble, and Taiho had learned long ago that trouble was best avoided. He was 34 years old, unmarried, and perfectly content with his quiet life. His mother had died when he was young. His father had disappeared into debt and alcohol. Taiho had raised himself, taught himself, and built everything he owned with patience and skill. He wanted nothing from the world except to be left alone with his work. The lightning flashed outside his window. Thunder shook the walls. Taiho set down his tea and looked out at the rain. The hills behind his property were dark shapes against the stormy sky. He had lived here all his life and knew every rock and tree on those hills. That was why he noticed immediately when something was wrong. A light appeared in the sky. It was not lightning. It was too bright, too steady, and it was moving. Taiho pressed his face against the cold glass and watched. The light grew larger and brighter. It was falling. Falling fast. The sound came next. A terrible screaming noise, like metal being torn apart. The light shot over his shop and crashed into the hillside behind his property. The impact shook the ground beneath his feet. Taiho grabbed the edge of his workbench to keep from falling. Then silence. Only the rain. Taiho stood very still for a long moment. His heart was beating fast. He should call someone. The police. The military. Someone. But his phone was old and the storm had killed the signal hours ago. And besides, something deep inside him was curious. He had fixed machines all his life. He had never seen anything fall from the sky. He put on his rain jacket, grabbed his flashlight, and walked out into the storm. The path up the hill was slippery with mud. Taiho climbed slowly, his flashlight cutting a weak beam through the darkness. The rain soaked through his clothes. His boots sank into the soft earth. But he kept climbing. He smelled it before he saw it. A strange smell, like burned metal and something else. Something chemical and alien. Then his flashlight found the edge of the crater. The craft was like nothing he had ever seen. It was not a plane. It was not a satellite. It was something else entirely. The metal was smooth and black, with no seams or rivets that he could see. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. The craft had carved a long trench through the hillside before coming to rest against a pile of broken trees. Taiho walked around the wreckage slowly. He was not afraid. He was fascinated. His mind was already working, studying the damage, trying to understand how this machine was built. The engineering was beyond anything he knew. Beyond anything human. Then he saw her. She was lying in the mud beside the craft. A woman. Her hair was long and silver white, spread around her head like a fan. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the darkness. She wore strange clothes, like armor made of fabric, torn and burned in many places. And there was blood. Violet blood, dark as wine, pooling beneath her body. Taiho ran to her side and knelt in the mud. She was breathing, but barely. Her eyes were closed. Her face was beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt. But it was her left shoulder that made him stop and stare. The shoulder was destroyed. The flesh was torn open, and beneath it, Taiho could see something that should not exist. Metal and wire and glowing circuits, all woven together with muscle and bone. She was not fully human. She was something more. Something mechanical and organic at the same time. He should leave her. He should go back to his shop and wait for morning and pretend he had seen nothing. That was the safe thing to do. The smart thing. But Taiho had never been very good at doing the smart thing. He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was. He carried her down the hill through the rain, slipping and struggling but never stopping. By the time he reached his shop, his arms were burning and his lungs were screaming for air. But he made it. He laid her on his workbench, pushing aside the tools and parts to make room. He found clean cloths and pressed them against her wounds. He brought out his emergency medical kit, the one he kept for when he cut himself on sharp metal. It was not much, but it was something. The woman's eyes opened suddenly. They were violet, like her blood, with tiny flecks of gold that caught the light. She looked at Taiho with a gaze that seemed to pierce right through him. "Where?" she whispered. Her voice was weak but clear. "My shop," Taiho said. "You crashed on the hill. I brought you here." She tried to move and gasped in pain. Her hand went to her ruined shoulder. "Who did this to you?" Taiho asked. She was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke one word. "Enemies. Do you have a name?" Another pause. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something. "Trust, maybe? Or danger?" "Yuna," she said finally. "My name is Yuna. I am Taiho. I fix things." He looked at her shoulder, at the impossible technology beneath her torn flesh. "I do not know what you are. I do not know where you came from. But I think I can help you. If you let me." Yuna stared at him. In her long life, she had known many creatures. Soldiers and slaves and kings and killers. She had learned to read faces, to see lies before they were spoken. But this man's face showed nothing but simple honesty. Simple kindness that it confused her. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me?" Taiho shrugged. It was such a human gesture. So casual. So meaningless and meaningful at the same time. "Because you are broken," he said. "And I fix broken things." He turned away and began gathering his tools. Yuna watched him, this strange little human in his dirty shop, and felt something she had not felt in centuries. Hope. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the small repair shop, a man began the impossible work of mending what others had tried to destroy. He did not know who she was. He did not know what he was starting. He simply began to work. 3 days passed. Taiho did not sleep. He barely ate. He worked. Yuna drifted in and out of consciousness, her body fighting to heal while Taiho fought to understand. Her shoulder was not like anything in his experience. The technology inside her was centuries ahead of anything on Earth, maybe thousands of years. The circuits were smaller than human eyes could see. The metal was lighter than air, but stronger than steel. The way her flesh connected to the machine was seamless, as if she had been born this way. But someone had broken it. The damage was not from the crash. Taiho could see the marks of weapons, energy burns, cutting tools. Someone had taken her apart with cruel precision, destroying the neural pathways that connected her brain to her mechanical shoulder. They had wanted to cripple her, to leave her alive but helpless. Taiho did not know who would do such a thing. He did not ask. He simply worked. On the first day, he studied. He used magnifying glasses and old microscopes to examine every piece of her damaged shoulder. He drew diagrams on scraps of paper. He made notes in his messy handwriting. He tried to understand the logic of her design, the flow of energy and information to her body. On the second day, he began to build. He did not have the right parts. Nothing on Earth was advanced enough. So he improvised. He took components from the crashed ship outside. He melted down circuits from old military drones. He used medical equipment meant for animals, tools designed for cows and pigs, and modified them with steady hands and desperate creativity. Yuna woke sometimes and watched him. She said little. The pain was too great for conversation. But she watched this human work, his face tight with concentration, his fingers moving with surprising grace. He talked to himself as he worked, muttering about connections and power flows and signal paths. He cursed it when things went wrong. He laughed when things went right. She had commanded armies. She had ruled star systems. She had ordered the deaths of millions with a single word. But she had never seen anyone work like this. With such focus, such care, such stubborn refusal to give up. On the third day, Taiho connected the last wire. "This might hurt," he said. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His hands were covered in small cuts and burns. "I do not know if it will work. I have never done anything like this before. But I hope." He pressed a small button on the device he had built. Electricity flowed. Signals traveled. Something inside Yuna's shoulder hummed to life. She felt it immediately. The numbness that had filled her left side began to fade. Sensation returned, slowly at first, then faster. She could feel the workbench beneath her fingers. She could feel the cool air on her skin. She could feel her own heartbeat pulsing through her repaired shoulder. "Try to move," Taiho said quietly. Slowly, Yuna lifted her left hand. Her fingers trembled. She closed them into a fist, opened them again, moved each finger one by one. The movement was not perfect. There was a slight delay, a tiny stiffness. But it worked. It actually worked. Tears ran down her face. She did not try to stop them. Taiho sat back in his chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. He watched her cry and felt uncomfortable. He was not good with emotions. He never had been. "The calibration is not perfect," he said, because talking about technical things was easier. "The response time is about 0.3 seconds slower than it should be. And I had to use a power cell from an old satellite, so you will need to recharge every few days. But the basic function is restored. You should be able to use it normally." Yuna looked at him. Her violet eyes were wet with tears, but something else burned beneath them. Something ancient and powerful and deeply confused. "No one has ever..." She started. Her voice broke. She tried again. "You do not understand what you have done." "I fixed your shoulder," Taiho said with a shrug. "It is what I do. You do not know who I am. You said your name is Yuna. That is not what I mean." She sat up slowly, testing her repaired shoulder. The movement was smooth, natural. I am not a good person. The ones who did this to me, they had reasons. Many reasons." Taiho was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and walked to his small kitchen area. He began making tea. "When I was young," he said, his back turned to her, "I found a dog in the street. It was hurt. Someone had beaten it. Maybe it had bitten someone. Maybe it had done something bad. I did not know. I did not ask. I just took it home and fixed its broken leg." He brought 2 cups of tea back to the workbench. He handed one to Yuna. "The dog stayed with me for 12 years. It never bit anyone again. It was the best friend I ever had." Yuna took the cup. The warmth felt strange against her fingers. "Good strange. You think I am like your dog?" "I think you are hurt," Taiho said simply. "I think someone tried to break you. And I think whoever you were before, you have a choice about who you want to be now." He drank his tea. Yuna stared at him. In her 300 years of life, she had been feared and worshipped and hated. She had been called Empress and Monster and God. Thousands had bowed before her. Thousands more had died cursing her name. She had believed she understood all the creatures in the galaxy, but she had never met anyone like this man. "You are very strange," she said finally. "Yes," Taiho agreed. "I have been told this before. You ask no questions. You want nothing from me. You simply help." "Yes. Why?" Taiho thought about this. It was a good question. He was not sure he knew the answer himself. "Because I can," he said finally. "Because you needed help and I could give it." That seems like enough reason. Yuna set down her tea. She flexed her repaired shoulder, feeling the strength return, feeling the impossible gift this impossible man had given her. "You have no idea what you have done," she said again. But this time, her voice was different, softer, almost wondering. "You humans, so wonderfully blind." She laughed. The sound surprised her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. It felt strange in her throat. Strange but good. Taiho smiled. It was a small smile, tired but warm. "Get some rest," he said. "The shoulder needs time to fully integrate with your system, and I need to sleep before I fall over." He walked to a small cot in the corner of his shop and lay down. Within seconds, he was asleep. Yuna watched him. This small human in his small shop, who had worked for 3 days without rest to save a stranger, who had asked nothing, expected nothing, simply helped. She looked at her shoulder, at the crude but effective repair work, at the ugly welds and mismatched components that somehow, impossibly, worked perfectly. For the first time in centuries, the Empress of the Volanti Dominion did not know what to do next. So she sat in the quiet shop, listening to the rain outside and the soft breathing of a sleeping man, and waited for morning. 3 weeks passed. The Vicari controlled the buildings and the streets, but they did not control the city. Not really. Every day, more officers died. Every night, more supplies disappeared from Vicari warehouses. Human refugees seemed to flow through the occupation like water through a net. They were everywhere and nowhere. High Commander Torak had stopped sleeping. His gray skin had become pale. His 4 eyes were bloodshot and tired. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions. He had never experienced anything like this. His officers were afraid to go outside. They moved in armored vehicles with shields raised at all times. They wore full combat armor even inside their own bases. And still, somehow, they died. A sniper shot through a ventilation shaft. A bullet that curved around a corner by bouncing off a mirror. A kill shot from a building that thermal scanners showed was completely empty because the shooter had covered herself in cold mud to hide her body heat. The humans were learning, adapting, getting better. Torak made a decision he had never made before in his long military career. He requested a parley. His message went out on all frequencies. He asked to meet with the human resistance leader. He promised safe passage. He promised to negotiate. In the subway tunnels, Beidou Hyun received the message. He sat in silence for a long time, thinking. Kang Yuna sat beside him. "It's a trap," she said. "Maybe," Do-Hyun agreed, "but I don't think so. They sound desperate." "They should be. We killed 12 more this week." Do-Hyun smiled slightly. 3 weeks ago, Yuna had been an athlete who had never hurt anyone. Now she spoke of killing like it was nothing more than keeping score. The war had changed all of them. "I will go," he said. "If I die, you take over." Yuna wanted to argue, but she saw the look in his eyes. He had made his decision. The meeting took place in the ruins of City Hall. Once, it had been a beautiful building of glass and steel. Now it was a skeleton, its windows shattered, its walls scarred by plasma fire. Do-Hyun walked in alone. He had a slight limp from shrapnel he had taken in the first week, He carried no weapons. He wore simple clothes, a jacket, pants, boots. He looked like any ordinary Korean man. Across the room, High Commander Torak waited with 2 guards. The alien was taller than Doyen had expected, nearly 2.5 meters. His 4 eyes studied the human with something that might have been curiosity. "You are their leader?" Torak asked. His voice came through a translator device on his chest. "I am one of them," Dohyun said. "We don't really have one leader." Torak waved this away. "Sit." They sat on broken chairs in the middle of the ruined building. Wind blew through the empty windows. Somewhere in the distance, something was burning. "We have analyzed your military forces," Torak began. "Your professional army is scattered. Your government has fled. You have no coordinated command structure. No air support, no heavy weapons." Dohyun said nothing. "Yet my officers continue to die." Torak leaned forward. "Precision kills. Single shots. No witnesses. We detect no military equipment. No special forces signatures. Nothing." He paused. "Which human is your sniper?" Dohyun blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Your sniper," Torak repeated. "The one who is killing my officers. We know you have one. Someone with extraordinary skill. Someone with training beyond anything we expected. Identify this person and we can negotiate terms." For a long moment, Dohyun simply stared at the alien commander. Then he did something Torak did not expect. He laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had just heard the funniest joke of his life. He laughed until tears came to his eyes. He laughed until his chest hurt. Torak waited, confused. Finally, Dohyun caught his breath. He wiped his eyes and looked at the alien with something like pity. "Sniper?" he said. "You think we have a sniper? Obviously you do. The skill level required for these kills." "Commander," Dohyun interrupted. "We don't have a sniper." Torak frowned. "Then who is killing my officers?" Dohyun leaned back in his chair. He looked at the alien for a long moment, considering how to explain something that should have been obvious. "Let me tell you about humans," he said. "In our culture, children start learning precision skills before they can read. We call them games, sports, hobbies. A child throws a ball at a target. A teenager shoots arrows at rings. A young man plays video games that require him to aim and fire thousands of times per hour." Torak listened. "We have competitions," Dohyun continued. "Millions of people around the world compete to see who can throw farthest, aim truest, shoot fastest. We call it entertainment. We give medals to the best. Then they retire and become accountants and fishermen and grandmothers." He paused. "You ask which human is our sniper." Dohyun smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Commander, you're asking the wrong question. Every human is a potential sniper. Every single one of us has spent our entire lives training for this moment without even knowing it." He stood up slowly. "You want me to identify our sniper? Fine." He gestured toward the window, toward the ruined city, toward the millions of people still hiding in its shadows. "Pick any civilian. Any one of them. The grandmother in that building over there. The teenager hiding in that basement. The office worker who used to play darts at the bar every Friday night." He looked directly into Torak's 4 eyes. "Pick any civilian. They don't fail." The room was silent. Torak stared at the human, searching for some sign that he was bluffing, exaggerating, trying to frighten him. He found nothing but cold truth. "This meeting is over," Dohyun said. "You can leave our planet now, or you can keep sending me targets. Your choice." He turned and walked out of the building. Torak's guards moved to stop him, but Torak raised a hand. "Let him go." The High Commander sat alone in the ruins for a long time, thinking about what he had just heard. "Pick any civilian. They don't fail. For the first time in his 3,000 years of war, High Commander Torak was afraid. They worked through the night. Taiho built the transmitter while Yuna watched and helped where she could. He used parts from her crashed ship, mixed with human technology and pure determination. By morning, they had something that could reach the stars. It will broadcast on every frequency, Taiho explained, connecting the last wires. Every ship in orbit will receive it. Every system in your empire will see it. Every world, every station, every soul. How do you know it will work? Taiho shrugged. I do not. But it is the best I can build with what we have. Yuna looked at the crude machine. It was ugly, unbalanced, made of mismatched pieces that should not fit together. Just like her repaired shoulder. Just like everything in this strange little shop. What do I say? She asked. The truth. The truth is ugly. Yes, but it is also true. That matters. The hours passed. The deadline approached. Commander Hayok sent another message, reminding Earth of its choice. Cities around the world fell into panic. Governments scrambled to respond. Armies mobilized that had no hope of fighting ships that could destroy continents. And in a small repair shop on the outskirts of Bizin, an empress prepared to speak. Are you ready? Taiho asked. Yuna looked at herself in a broken mirror. Her silver hair was tangled. Her face was tired. Her strange armor was still torn and stained. She looked nothing like the empress she had once been. Good, she thought. That empress was a monster. No, she said. But I will do it anyway. Taiho pressed the button. The broadcast began. Yuna's image appeared on every screen in the orbiting fleet. Every monitor on every planet in the Volanti Dominion. Every device in the 12-star systems she had once ruled. Trillions of eyes turned to watch. She stood in the cluttered warehouse where they had set up the equipment. Behind her, spare parts and old machines created a backdrop that was painfully humble. A repaired shoulder gleamed in the harsh light. My name is Yuna, she began. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled at her sides. I was your empress. For 300 years, I ruled the Volanthi Dominion. I conquered worlds. I crushed rebellions. I ordered the deaths of millions. She paused. The galaxy waited. I was cruel. I ruled through fear because I believed it was the only way. I believed that power required brutality. I believed that strength meant making others weak. I was wrong. On the ships above Earth, soldiers looked at each other in confusion. This was not what they had expected. On distant worlds, citizens gathered around screens, listening to words they had never thought they would hear. The men who now hunt me were once my most loyal generals. They rose against me because they could no longer serve a monster. They were right to rebel. I gave them every reason. Commander Hayok watched from his flagship, his face unreadable. His officers whispered among themselves. Some reached for weapons. Others simply stared. They wanted to break me, to leave me alive but helpless. A symbol of fallen tyranny. Yuna touched her shoulder. They almost succeeded. I crashed on this small world, alone and dying. I expected no help. I deserved none. She looked off camera where Taiho stood watching. But a human found me. A simple mechanic. A man who fixes broken things. He did not know who I was. He did not ask what I had done. He simply saw someone who needed help, and he helped. Our voice grew stronger. He worked for 3 days without sleep. He used primitive tools and salvaged parts. He rebuilt my shoulder, not because I paid him, not because I threatened him, but because I was broken and he knew how to fix broken things. He asked nothing. He expected nothing. He simply helped. The galaxy held its breath. I have commanded armies. I have ruled star systems. I have made entire civilizations tremble with fear. But this one human, in his dirty little shop, showed me more kindness in 3 days than I showed my empire in 3 centuries. Yuna straightened. Her eyes burned with something new, something fierce. I am not asking for my throne. I do not deserve it. I am asking for something smaller, something harder. I am asking for the chance to change, to be different, to become the kind of person who helps rather than hurts, who heals rather than destroys. She took a breath. Commander HFY, you can take me. You can execute me. You can parade my body through every world I once ruled. That is your right. I earned that fate with every terrible thing I did. Her voice softened. But if you do, ask yourself this. What kind of empire will you build? One of fear and revenge? Or something better? Something that this one human showed me was possible? She looked directly into the camera. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking you to trust me. I am only asking you to believe that people can change. That the galaxy does not have to be ruled by fear. That strength can come from kindness instead of cruelty. A long pause. If you choose to take me, I will not resist. But if you choose to let me try, to let me become something new, then I will spend every remaining day of my life trying to undo the harm I have done. I will serve instead of rule. I will heal instead of hurt. I will be the student of a human mechanic who taught me that broken things can be mended. She smiled. It was a small, sad, hopeful smile. That is all I have to say. The choice is yours. The broadcast ended. Silence fell over the warehouse. Taiho and Yuna stood in the darkness, waiting. Minutes passed. Then hours. The ships did not fire. No soldiers came crashing through the doors. The world did not end. Slowly, reports began to come in. Ships in the fleet were breaking formation. Captains were refusing orders. On distant worlds, people were gathering in the streets, not in anger, but in wonder. The Empress had confessed. The Empress had apologized. The Empress had asked for a chance to change. No one knew what to do with that. Commander HFY finally appeared on screen again. His face was different now. Tired, confused, almost human. The fleet will withdraw, he announced. The matter of the former Empress will be decided by council, not by force. Earth is safe. The screens went dark. Taiho sat down heavily on a broken crate. His hands were shaking. He had not realized how afraid he had been. Yuna stood very still. She was crying again, but this time, the tears felt different. Lighter. It worked, she whispered. It worked, Taiho agreed. I do not know what happens now. Neither do I. He looked up at her. But I think that is okay. Sometimes you just have to fix what is in front of you and figure out the rest later. Yuna laughed. It was a broken, beautiful sound. You humans, she said. You are absolutely impossible. Yes, Taiho said. We have been told this before. Outside, the ships began to leave. The darkness lifted from the sky. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new story was beginning. Not a story of conquest and fear. A story of change. 6 months passed. The galaxy did not forget. The broadcast had spread like fire through dry grass. Every world in the Volanti Dominion had seen it. Every citizen had heard the Empress confess her crimes and ask for a chance to change. Some called it a trick. Some called it weakness. But many, far more than anyone expected, called it hope. Commander HFY's rebellion fractured within weeks. Without a common enemy to unite them, the generals turned on each other. Old grudges surfaced. New alliances formed and broke. The unity of hatred could not survive the absence of the thing it hated. And in the chaos, something unexpected happened. People began to talk about Yuna differently. Not as the monster who had ruled them. Not as the tyrant who had crushed their worlds. But as the woman who had stood in a dirty warehouse and admitted she was wrong. The woman who had cried on camera and asked for forgiveness she knew she did not deserve. They called her the Mended Empress, the Mechanic Sovereign, the Broken Queen who chose to heal. Yuna stayed on Earth for 3 more months. She lived in Taiho's shop, sleeping on a cot in the corner, eating human food, learning human ways. She fixed tractors and robots and drones. She learned to cook rice and make tea. She watched human dramas on Taiho's old television and cried at the sad parts. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time in her long life. But she knew she could not stay. Messages came from across the galaxy. Not demands, not threats, requests, invitations, world leaders who wanted to talk, former enemies who wanted to understand, young people who had grown up under her rule and wanted to know if change was really possible. "You have to go," Taiho said one morning. They were sitting outside the shop, watching the sunrise over the hills. "Your people need you. I do not want to rule anymore." "Then do not rule, serve. There is a difference." Yuna looked at him. In 6 months, she had learned every line of his face, every scar on his hands, every small smile and quiet sigh. She knew him better than she had ever known anyone. "Come with me," she said. Taiho shook his head slowly. "I am not made for stars and empires. I am made for this." He gestured at his shop, at the hills, at the simple world around them. "Someone has to keep things running here. I will miss you. I will miss you too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small toolkit. It was old and worn, the leather case cracked and stained. "For your shoulder. When it needs tuning." Yuna took the toolkit. Her hands were trembling. "This is your father's." It was. "Now it is yours." He closed her fingers around it. "Take care of it. Take care of yourself." Yuna leaned forward and kissed his cheek. She had learned the gesture from human dramas. It felt strange and right and heartbreaking all at once. "You changed the galaxy, Taiho." He laughed softly. "No, I just fixed the shoulder. You fixed more than that." She stood. A small transport waited behind the shop, sent by leaders who wanted to begin building something new. It was time to go. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Taiho looked at the sunrise. "I will be here. I am always here. When you need a place to rest, when the galaxy becomes too heavy, come back. I will make tea, and we will fix something broken together." Yuna smiled through her tears. "That sounds nice." "It is. It always is." She walked to the transport. At the door, she turned back one last time. Taiho raised his hand in a simple wave. She raised hers in return. Then she was gone. The years that followed became legend. The Mended Empress traveled from world to world, not as a conqueror, but as a servant. She listened to grievances. She acknowledged crimes. She helped rebuild what she had destroyed. She never asked for power. She never demanded respect. She simply worked, day after day, trying to undo the harm she had done. It was not easy. Many never forgave her. Many tried to kill her. But she persisted, carrying her toolkit everywhere she went, fixing small things when she could not fix big ones. A broken generator here, a damaged ship there. Simple work that kept her humble. That reminded her who she wanted to be. The galaxy changed slowly. Fear gave way to something else. Not love, exactly. Not yet, but possibility. The belief that things could be different. That monsters could become healers. That broken empires could be mended. And it all started with a simple man in a simple shop who saw a broken woman and chose to help. 10 years later, Yuna returned to Earth, She found Taiho exactly where she had left him. Older now, his hair touched with gray, his hands still scarred and strong. He was working on a tractor when she walked through the door of his shop. He looked up, smiled. "Shoulder still working?" Yuna laughed. The sound was easy now, natural. "Yes, but I think it needs tuning." "Sit down. I will take a look." She sat on the same workbench where she had woken 10 years ago, bleeding and broken and alone. Taiho examined her shoulder with gentle hands. The repair still held. The crude welds and mismatched parts had become part of her, as much her own as the flesh she was born with. "You have been busy," he said. "I see the news sometimes. They say you are changing the galaxy. I am trying. That is all anyone can do." He made adjustments, tightened connections, applied lubricant to joints that had grown stiff with use. His hands moved with the same patient skill they always had. "Will you stay?" he asked. "For a while. If you will have me. Always." Yuna looked around the shop. It had not changed much. New machines to fix. New parts on the shelves. But the same worn chair. The same cracked mirror. The same feeling of quiet purpose. "I have been to 1,000 worlds," she said. "I have seen wonders you cannot imagine. But this place, this is still my favorite place in the galaxy." Taiho finished his work and stepped back. "Why? Because this is where I was mended. Not just my shoulder. All of me. This is where I learned that broken things do not have to stay broken. That monsters do not have to stay monsters. That anyone, even an empress who had done terrible things, could choose to be better." She took his hand. "You gave me that, Taiho. You did not know what you were doing. You did not know who I was. You just saw someone broken and decided to help. That one choice changed everything." Taiho squeezed her hand. "That is the human way," he said simply. "We see broken things. We fix them. We do not ask if they deserve it. We do not ask what they will become. We just do what we can and hope it matters." Yuna smiled. For the first time in her long life, she understood. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of darkness. But it was also full of people like Taiho, simple people who fixed broken things, who showed kindness without expecting reward, who believed that anything could be mended if someone cared enough to try. That was the human way, and it had saved her. Outside the shop, the sun was setting over the hills. Yuna and Taiho sat together, drinking tea and watching the colors change. They did not speak. They did not need to. Some things could not be expressed in words. Some things could only be felt. And in that quiet moment, in a small repair shop on a small planet in a vast and endless galaxy, an empress and a mechanic sat together in peace. Both of them, finally, whole.